Hello, this is David Sandbeck. I'd like to congratulate Betty McCollum on earning the party's endorsement this weekend. The count was made final and made public, and Betty won by a substantial margin. And at the same time, I'd like to thank the delegates, 43 delegates that supported my candidacy. And it demonstrates there is an interest in a competitive primary. So, after this count was completed, one of the volunteers asked if I would honor the endorsement. And my response here is Mark Dayton proceeded in his first term after not having earned the party's endorsement. Governor Walz continued without earning the party endorsement. Our current Attorney General, Keith Ellison, went on without the party endorsement. And so these Democratic leaders show us that competition within the party is still healthy and still viable and still acceptable. And so I will continue to the August 11th primary. There's a few things I'd like to touch on. This isn't an attack on Betty McCollum or her supporters. I'd like to be clear that Betty has been in D.C. for 2 decades. And over those 20 years, she has been bombarded by corporate donors. And she is suffering, along with the rest of our Congress, by a sort of Helsinki syndrome, held captive by the donor class through our campaign finance system. They are, and she is, more responsive, more sympathetic to their needs than ours. Her support of the CARE Act is strong evidence of that. In that act, just to touch on it, over 80% of the financial benefits of that act go to the millionaire class, the donor class, and not to the common people. Also, let's look at other big donors. Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, that's the military-industrial complex. And Betty has been supporting these huge, wasteful budgets that feed the war machine instead of domestic investment. It is a theft from education. It is a theft from healthcare. It is a theft from infrastructure, what we should be investing in instead. These huge defense budgets that go to feed the war machine are unaudited, unaccountable, extremely wasteful. We give billions, tens of billions of dollars more than what is initially asked. And what happens with that surplus? Well, Trump goes to build his wall. He misappropriates those funds, largely without consequence. So when we give them more than they even ask for, we embolden a president that is destructive, that is a man-child. And so Betty has emboldened Trump with those votes. She voted for Trump's Space Force, for example, in these huge, wasteful budgets. We already have a Space Command in the Air Force. So redundancy, more redundancy where it's not needed. In Betty's first term, she voted for soft money corruption, and that's when these kinds of special interests buy influence at the party levels, national, state, local party units contributing there. They buy our party, and they also buy our elected representatives by donating to their PACs. Betty has a leadership PAC that the military-industrial complex donates to, and then to the campaign directly. So it allows them to double the amount of money they can contribute in that respect. So we have to challenge that system. So we need to champion democracy through public financing of elections. We need democratic justice. We need healthcare justice through expanded and improved Medicare for all as a single-payer system. These are both things that Betty is not in favor of. And we need to challenge the military-industrial complex. And as I just indicated, accepting contributions from them isn't challenging them. Betty is a ranking member of the Sub-Appropriations Committee of Defense. and she's not doing her part to contain the military-industrial complex. There's a lot of ways we can do that, but number one is you can't take their money. So we need a competitive primary. Unfortunately, in our democracy of minimums, even here in the 4th Congressional District, the media ignores my campaign, ignores progressive primary challengers, while giving voice to conservatives, to Republican primary challenge opponents, instead of progressive primary challengers. So that tells you the distortion of our media. They don't want competition. The establishment wants an anointed voice that serves their interest. The Star Tribune has printed a similar story multiple times under a similar headline that encapsulates the incumbent's 20 years. Betty McCollum quietly accumulates power is the title that has been printed a couple of times in the Star Tribune paper. And so the key difference between myself, David Sandbeck, and the incumbent, Betty McCollum, is that I have no interest in quietly accumulating power. Given the opportunity, I will speak truth about power, and I will speak truth to power. I'm not interested in the quiet accumulation of power. And once inside corporate-occupied territory, once there, I will do all I can to expose the status quo corruption both parties are complicit in. So I will continue to the primary. What can you do to help deliver a competitive primary and to expand the spectrum of debate? Well, number one, let's make sure Betty McCollum knows you want a debate. So make sure you call Betty McCollum's office and you let her know you want a debate. So please call her office at 651-224-9191 and let her know that she should have a debate with David Sandbeck, her primary challenger, her most significant primary challenger, who earned almost 20% of the delegates in our convention. And you have to remember that, that 20% may sound paltry, but we still have super delegates, and they're almost a third of the delegates. So there's actually much more grassroots support for this campaign than that number suggests. So again, please do call Betty McCollum and ask her to participate in a debate. And call her office at 651-224-9191 and ask her to do what she can to champion democracy here in the 4th Congressional District. It is entirely up to her. She doesn't have to negotiate with Republicans to do this. It's entirely up to her. And it's up to you to ask her to do this kind of debate, to honor democracy, to honor the voices who showed up to go through the process. And also, we haven't had a competitive primary in this district for quite a while. So it's time, and Betty McCollum is very capable of arguing her point, and I look forward to her making the case. So that's one of the key things you can do to help deliver a greater democracy and expand the spectrum of debate in the 4th Congressional District. You can also look her up online and send her electronic correspondence as well. Another thing you can do is, as I pointed out, our periodicals, our media has ignored this campaign. So call up your favorite media outlets, especially local outlets, and encourage them to cover this campaign. Call them out on how they've been ignoring progressive challengers and how they will report on conservative and Republican challengers while ignoring progressive challengers. Call out that bias that they have That's another way you can help expand the spectrum of debate in the 4th Congressional District. And then finally, I've largely self-financed. I'm not a rich man, but I don't have any expensive hobbies, so I've been able to use, what would have been wasted on beer and sweet snacks and whatever hobbies people do these days. Gaming, for example. I don't game. I've put it towards our democracy and expanding the spectrum of debate. But send in $3 or whatever you can. Go to sandbeckforcongress.com, and there's a little donation button that'll take you to Act Blue, and you'll be able to contribute easily that way. Also on sandbeckforcongress.com, I have a letter to Minnesota that explains why we need a competitive primary. And I really, there's some grotesque things shared in there, but things really are that bad when we look at American hegemony across the world and how we've expanded 2 wars into 7, and all of the waste that we've invested in this human misery and the military-industrial complex instead of education, healthcare, and infrastructure domestically. And again, it's a sort of a theft. And the last president that we really had acknowledged that was Dwight Eisenhower. And so we need to return to an Eisenhower minimum, and that's the minimum amount we need to sustain a vital military, but not so much that we're emboldened to go into these endless wars. So that's what we can do. So call Betty McCollum, call the local media. If you are in a position, please donate $3, whatever you can, on sandbeckforcongress.com. This is David Sandbeck. Thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to our primary this August 11th. Real quick, voting starts June 28th. You can vote early, in person, avoid the lines. You can vote from home. We have vote by mail, and you can go to the Secretary of State's website and get signed up and register to vote by mail. Just a heads up on voting by mail, you have to have a witness. I'm confident it has to be another registered voter. So make sure you get registered. Get this all done in advance. We have time, but get it done. And I think that's about all. So thanks again for your time and attention. I'm David Sandbeck, and looking forward to working with you all to deliver a competitive primary. Thank you.